Hi, I'm Ben, and today we're going to be looking at the upcoming Magus class for Pathfinder 2nd Edition and what we know. I am so excited for the upcoming release for Secrets of Magic for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. There is so much incredible stuff that is coming between the Magus class, the Summoner class, all sorts of new spells, and new ways to cast spells. I am so jazzed for my players to get a hand on that book. And as I was lurking on the Pathfinder subreddit, as I am I saw that somebody a couple of weeks ago made a compiled list of everything that we know about the new version of the Magus. User/Dracantier has been following the Paizo Discord very closely and has compiled a list of 11 things that we know about the Magus so far. And from this list, it seems like there are going to be some serious changes to the class from what we saw in the playlist, and I wanted to talk to you all about it now. If you want to be following along with this video, or you have any questions or need clarification about anything I talk about, in the links below, I have included both the post that I am referencing and the original PDF of the Magus playtest. The first is that Spellstrike has seen a huge overhaul. In the playlist, this was a very restrictive and expensive action to use. You had to use a free action to establish that you were going to be spell striking. Then you had to spend 2 actions to cast a spell. And then you could use your strike action to make an attack fusing both together. This is a very restrictive class feature that really locked the Magus into one specific style of play, which is to spell strike until the problem goes away. The Magus has been given a lot more flexibility, however, as spell strike is now a 2-action activity. Part of this 2-action activity is casting a spell that requires 1 or 2 actions and requires a spell attack roll. You use your weapon roll instead of the spell attack roll, and assumably, if both hit, then you deal the damage for both. However, if the attack misses, the spell is lost. Furthermore, Spellstrike requires recharging, so you can either use an action to recharge your Spellstrike, or your Spellstrike is recharged when you cast a Magus-focused spell. Already, this allows for so much more flexibility for this cast. You get a whole action back, allowing you to position yourself better, or if you take feats for it, use intimidation, or feign, or grapple, or whatever you are trying to do. This design is also really elegant and beautiful, basically allowing you to spell strike at will for free for cantrips if you use all 3 actions. 2 to spell strike and 1 to recharge. If you want to remain dynamic on the battlefield, you can do that as well, spell striking this turn, and the next turn casting a Magus focus spell, which recharges your spell strike to use the next turn. One of the biggest complaints with the playtest version of the Magus is that it really restricted you to one way to play, and already we are seeing that Paizo is trying to give you options when you are playing the Magus. This is also true with the second thing we know, which is that there is a feat that allows you to use a spell that requires a saving throw with your spell strike. At base, spell strike only targets 1 creature. However, there are feats that allows your spell strike to target more creatures. My theory is that this feat comes pretty early. In fact, I almost wonder if this is a 1st or 2nd level feat, just based on the Arcane spell list as it is right now, not having a lot in the way of spells that require a spell attack roll. This could be changing with the release of Secrets of Magic, but we don't know that yet, so I can only assume. I imagine this feat chain will be really good though, allowing you to strike 1 target for a lot of damage and then blasting out an area effect spell behind them. For the sake of continuity here, we're going to skip around to number 5, which is Arcane Cascade. This is a stance that you can enter, and you enter it by casting a spell. Any spell works, so this can be a normal spell you have, a Magus focus spell, or spell strike. The stance grants additional damage on weapon attacks and operates very similarly in the way to the Bespell weapon feat, which was in the playtest. Furthermore, it grants an additional benefit based on your hybrid study. Aha, now you see why I did it this way. Hybrid study is something that replaces your Magus synthesis. Each synthesis pretty much locked you into a very specific weapon style, but the hybrid studies have become much more flexible, granting you a benefit and then giving you a focus spell which highly encourages a certain type of play. And the focus spells granted by your hybrid study are generally one action economy boosters, and there are 5 hybrid studies in total. Laughing Shadow, which encourages the use of a one-handed weapon in one hand and a free hand in the other. Starlit Span, which allows the use of Spellstrike with ranged weapons. Sparkling Targe, which is one of my personal favorites. It allows the use of a one-handed weapon and a shield. Inexorable Iron, which is for two-handers, and Twisting Tree, which is my other favorite, that really encourages you to use a staff. We also know what a lot of these focus spells are going to be. For Sparkling Targe, for example, you make a strike and you are also able to raise your shield or cast the shield cantrip as part of the same action. You also recharge Spellstrike with this. And Twisting Trees allows you to make 2 weapon attacks, one against 2 different targets, and you also recharge your Spellstrike. Furthermore, as I mentioned, each hybrid study gives you a different benefit when you are in your Arcane Cascade stance. Laughing Shadow, for example, grants you extra damage against flat-footed opponents, and Inexorable Iron grants you temporary HP every round. Not only is this so much more flexible, but all of these abilities and focus spells sound so incredibly cool and powerful. It really seems like they're ramping up the Magus to 11 for the official release. We also see how they've opened up all of these hybrid studies. For example, Sparkling Targe would generally be considered the shield hybrid study, but the focus spell only encourages that. In fact, if you just take the shield spell, then you can cast that as the focus spell instead, totally not even worrying about wielding the shield. Furthermore, Inexorable Iron is very clearly designed for two-handed usage, and I bet there will be Inexorable Iron hybrid study feats that focus on two-handed weapons, but I would also wager that their Arcane Cascade is going to be granting you temporary hit points regardless of what weapon you're wielding. Going to number 4, Starlit Span will work with guns and allows you to spell strike with both bullets or arrows. And Twisting Tree allows you to fight with sword and staff. It will work with arcane staves, and Twisting Tree will allow you to fight with both sword and staff if you're going for that Gandalf look. Furthermore, it will work with spell staves, and you will be able to put property runes on your staves. Though it has been explicitly mentioned that shifting is not allowed, and Grasping Reach will be useless to the Twisted Tree mages. On those last 2 points, it does make sense to me that shifting is disallowed. It doesn't really feel in the flavor of the Twisted Tree mages first off, and I'm sure that will also lead to power problems if you're just turning your spell stave into a weapon. That point about Grasping Reach is really interesting too, and it makes me wonder if there's going to be a feat just for Twisted Tree mages that is pretty much the same thing as the Grasping Reach feat. We know the spellcasting progression for both the Magus and the Summoner, and it pretty much follows the Monk and Champion spell progression, note for note. That means they become experts at 9th level and masters at 17th level. I think this is incredibly smart for the Magus. I mean, they have these classes that are already kind of blending magic and martial prowess, so using them as a basis I think is really strong design. I also think this is important too. It can be really easy with these Gish kind of classes to pull too much from the arcane and too much from the martial and step on both their toes. It seems like they're trying to give the mages their own unique spot at the table while also keeping them flexible and effective. And going off of the progression of other classes feels like a good way to do that. We also know that the Magus will still use a 4 spell slot system. However, the Martial Caster feat has been totally removed and replaced with a 7th level class feature that will give you spells based on your hybrid study. This feels like a much smarter way to do it. One, you get to make sure that the spells you are getting are going to be effective for the way you are playing the game. And furthermore, Martial Caster just felt like a really important class feat, especially compared to the other ones of that same level. And so just building it into the base class means that you are feeling less pressured to take that kind of must-have feat. I also personally really don't have a problem with the Magus' 4 spell slot system. Again, I think this is a way to make sure that they aren't stepping on casters' toes too much. They only have a very limited amount of spell slots, so they have to make sure they're using them carefully, but once they're out, they're still an effective martial person, but not more effective than people who dedicate themselves to martial fighting. We know a little bit about some of the Magus feats. We know that the Raise a Tome feat is still there. We also know that it will be able to be used in tandem with the Sparkling Targe hybrid study. Furthermore, we know there is a feat that actually allows you to fuse your tome with a magical shield. Spirit Sheath is still there as a second level feat, and there's also a feat called Cascading Ray, which basically allows you to use the residual magic from casting a spell and focusing it at your target, dealing extra damage to them. I have a lot of questions about that Cascading Ray feat. 1, I wonder if it has to be the same target you used your Spellstrike on. 2, I wonder if it can work at range, and if it has any synergy with Starlit Spam. I'm really glad that Raise a Tome made the cut. I absolutely love that feat. It is so neat and flavorful, and it also benefits a playstyle that I think the mages should be good at. I think the mages should be good at recalling knowledge on their foes. We know a little bit about mages multiclassing. We also know that it's gonna be weird. We know that the mages multiclassing spellcasting feats will not go on the normal basic expert master track, which means if you're an Eldritch Trickster, you won't be able to take it for your racket. We know you will be able to gain Spellstrike. It will be a much more restricted version of it, and you'll have to wait until 4th level. You can only Spellstrike once per minute, and there will be no way to recharge it besides waiting that allotted amount of time. All in all, this is another thing I'm totally okay with. I don't think Eldritch Trickster is going to miss it too much anyways. I mean, if they want to take the archetype really badly, then they can always take it at normal feat progression. And otherwise, I just don't think they would be missing too much by not having Spellstrike available. I mean, if that's the flavor you're going for, that's totally understandable. But otherwise, considering you're already adding sneak attack to your spells, I just don't think that this archetype is going to be adding too much for the Eldritch Trickster. I'm really curious to see how they reconcile this multi-class archetype with the Eldritch Archer archetype. It just feels like those two will be kind of playing the same ground, and I wonder if they'll make any reference to that in Secrets of Magic. At second to last on this list, we know that the Magus is an Arcane prepared spellcaster. They will be specifically prevented from taking Flexible Caster as an archetype. There will also be no way to change their tradition or change them into a spontaneous caster. If that were something you were looking forward to, then it should be a pretty easy homebrew fix, although I do understand that they are trying to limit the versatility of those 4 spell slots. I do think this is the one thing that will hamper the mages slightly, as they are going to have to be very careful about what they pick for those 4 spells that they have a day. And the last thing we know is actually from somebody who added it in the comments, from user/another throwaway 469, who says, there's going to be a way to fuse your stave and a weapon, even for non-Twisted Tree Magi. It is unclear, however, if this is going to work as a staff weapon combo, or if it is going to be a one-action swap, which they feel is the more likely option. I have to agree with them there. I think that is the most likely thing, and is probably also the reason that they don't allow the shifting property rune to be added to your staff. Looking at these holistically, we see a class that is shaping up to be something really flexible and dynamic on the battlefield. If you are playing a Magus, you are going to be able to run into the battle and Spellstrike and then enter an Arcane Cascade. Or if you're already in the fight, you can Spellstrike and then you can cast your Magus Focus spell, which allows you to attack again and also recharges your Spellstrike for the next flurry. Also, your action economy is much more opened up, meaning that if you want to, there is room to build a feigning build, especially for Laughing Shadow, or to have the actions available if you want to put up your shield for Sparkling Targe. I even think that Starlit Spam would be really good for a Bon Mot build. I am always impressed at the dedication and detail Paizo goes into to listen to their audience. Everything that they covered is directly from the feedback that they got during their playtest, and they've been very open about those changes and why they are making those changes, which I think is really incredible. What do you think about the upcoming Magus, though? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, consider liking it. And if you like the kind of content we do here, please consider subscribing. We just recently gave it an update, including a monthly additional podcast exclusive for Patreon supporters. So please go ahead and check that out. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on your next short rest. I wanted to thank all of our supporters on Patreon: Painted Sky, Faizana Mod, and Robert Allen Klaus III. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it.